We invited the Immigration Minister on the program to discuss the decision. He declined. A short time ago, I spoke with the opposition immigration spokesman. Scott Morrison, welcome.
Hi Chris, good to be with you.
Isn't today's decision a blow for the very idea of offshore processing?
No, it's not. I mean, the case today and the judgment today dealt with the government's proposal to send people to Malaysia and the absence of any legal protections in Malaysia for asylum seekers. Now, the judgment itself in particular made direct comparisons to Nauru and actually made the point that protections were in place in Nauru, specifically provided by Australia, because Australia was in a position to actually deliver those protections, not only in terms of non-refoulement but also in terms of the processing. So Nauru, I think, was favourably referred to, and the fact that they've also now signed the Refugee Convention, I think, only further strengthens that case.
But doesn't it point out that if a person now presents at the border, you can't just send them offshore, you have to process their claim first? In the words of the court, you have to first assess whether their claims to be persons to whom Australia owes protection obligations are met.
No, I think what is clear is that you're able to make a declaration under Section 198A that a country is a place that provides the protections that are set out in that declaration, and you need to make sure that you have the processes and protections in place in that country to achieve that, and that's what Nauru does achieve. That's what our policies always did achieve, and remember, we ran these policies for the entire time we were in government after they were introduced in late 2001. So our policies are proven. They've been in place and they've been shown to be effective.
But after this judgment, you couldn't now send a child to Nauru without first signing an order to send that child, and that would be judicially reviewable, and you'd have to do it for each and every child.
Well, those orders are set out as a requirement under the Act. And again, I mean, these are issues that we don't believe present any great challenge for us. And we'd be interested to know what the government's view on that is, given they're seeking to pursue the processing centre in Papua New Guinea. And so obviously we'll have a close look at their advice, should they care to share it with us. But obviously the government isn't walking away from their proposal to reopen the facility in Papua New Guinea.
Isn't it time now for the government and the coalition to sit down in the national interest and work out the best possible system for Australia?
Well, we've offered our policies to this government ever since they abolished them. And this is the government that changed the settings. They walked away from solutions that were working. We had 4 people in detention who'd arrived by boat when this government was first elected. We've had now a peak of almost 7,000, 6,500 people arrived by boat in particular. Our detention centres are just in a calamitous situation, costing over $1 billion a year. We had another fire in another detention centre today. It's just one big ugly mess under this government.
And certainly you may well inherit that system, and the department itself has said that it's time to take another look at mandatory detention, will you?
Well, what the Secretary said at the time was reflecting what the terms of reference was for the inquiry, which I had a key hand in writing. That inquiry is underway. We'll be on Christmas Island next week. We'll be in Derby and Curtin having a look at the centres there. So, you know, that's a matter before the inquiry, and we're participating in that. But the real issue here, Chris, is that, I mean, this government's incompetence has been found out yet again. This is not an isolated case of incompetence. This is the government that is writing the book on incompetence. I mean, it's their incompetence that has broken this government's business model, and this has been demonstrated yet again in the High Court decision.
Isn't it time, though, to have someone like the Productivity Commission perhaps look at our mandatory detention system and see whether or not it measures up to a cost-benefit analysis? We're spending billions on it.
Well, let's have the parliamentary inquiry and let's see what the evidence is there, and let's test the arguments. I'm always very happy, Chris, for our arguments and our policies to be tested. That's why I was very happy to pursue the inquiry in the terms in which it's been put forward. We're very confident about the way our policies work. They've been proven in the past, and I think people have trusted the coalition on this issue because we don't flip and flop around the place, we don't jump around, we don't chase the wind as this government does. We have a clear view, we have a clear set of principles, we know what our objective is, and we pursue it. Now, others criticise us for that, and the government criticises us for wanting to stop the boats. But you know, that is the objective of our policy, and that's what we'll pursue.
But certainly it's been a very useful political bludgeon for you. Isn't it time to put down the weapons and, in the national interest, talk to the government about settling on a system that will work?
Well, we have one, Chris. We had one.
And so if the government came to you today,
the
minister didn't rule out any options. So if the government came to you tomorrow and said, we are now going to consider Nauru, we are going to consider temporary protection visas inside Australia, you would pass that legislation?
I would welcome that conversation. I've been calling for it ever since I've been in this portfolio, and the government has steadfastly refused it with their anything but Nauru strategy, which found its natural end in the High Court today. And that's what we've been calling for. It was the government who walked away from those policies that worked, and today he refused to rule out that they wouldn't now consider them. So he didn't rule out that he would look at temporary protection visas. He didn't rule out that he'd look at reopening Nauru. If the government wants to engage us on those issues, they are very welcome to do so. But they've been pretty late to the table on this. I mean, what has it taken for them to get to that point? More than 12,000 people turning up, fires in our detention centres, self-harm incidents going through the roof, and now another embarrassing international failure on this Malaysian solution on top of the Prime Minister's East Timor failed solution. I mean, in the year of delivery, this is a pretty big area of non-delivery from this minister and this Prime Minister.
Scott Morrison, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris.